most daily tarot practices begin with a question like, what do I need to know about today? Or what do I need to know today? And then somebody pulls a card. And I don't know about you, but that question has never really worked for me. I've never found it to be helpful or useful. And that's not because I don't love tarot. I absolutely do. I have honestly probably way too many decks. I love journaling. I love symbolic images. I love spending time with imagery and cards and playing with all the things. But every time I've tried like a really general open-ended daily card pull, it just feels really off for me, and just like I said, like not at all useful or like applicable, or it's kind of like, okay, that's either something that I'm like already aware of, or it's just general, and I don't know, but it just doesn't work for me. On one hand, like that, there's that piece of it just being like super like vague and not like helpful. The other thing that I don't really like about daily card pulls is that it almost feels like I'm asking the cards to decide in some way, like what matters about my day before I've even like lived it. And it just feels like getting really like locked into something, versus being kind of like, I guess more like open-ended, exploratory. It just doesn't sit right with me. I just do not like it. So if you've watched any other videos on my channel, you already know that the way that I work with cards is different, right? So I'm not really interested in asking like, what does a particular card like mean in a general sense? I'm much more interested in asking and exploring like, what does this image bring up in me? Because in my approach, the meaning does not live inside the card. It emerges in the moment between the relationship between myself and the image, or I'm going to use in this this video, I'm going to use like contemplation cards. So these are a little bit kind of oracle-y, you know, the words, or if I'm using something like charms or symbols, it's more about my relation to it in that moment, in that particular context of my life. And so that's how I use, when I say imagery, I'm referring to, you know, tarot, Dixit, oracle, charms, RPGs, really anything. I'm also going to be playing with some kind of, these are called Imagedice. They're almost like Rory's story cubes. So I'm going to be playing with those in this practice I'm going to share with you. Right. So basically the image isn't there to give me answers. It's really, its only purpose is to help me notice something that I may not have noticed otherwise. Right. So all that said, I started to think about, you know, what would a daily tarot card practice, journaling practice look like if it wasn't solely focused on getting like specific guidance from the cards? Like, what if it was more about paying attention and noticing? So I wanted this practice to have a few things. One is taking, you know, about 10 to 15 minutes. I wasn't looking, you know, I have lots of videos on practices on my channel that are fairly lengthy, but this one I wanted it to be something that I could do, you know, fairly quickly every morning. So, you know, taking about 10 to 15 minutes or so. One that would let me use a lot of decks, because another thing that I don't like so much about daily card pulls is that I have a ton of different tarot decks and oracle decks and other types of decks, and if I was only pulling one card every day, I would literally never like get anywhere. So, and I also really like to combine different types of decks, as you can see in this. I'm going to show you the practice that I eventually came up with, but I'm using, you know, the contemplation cards, which are literally just like words on the cards. And then I'm going to also use these, the dice, right? And then of course I want it to feel meaningful. I don't want to just like be pulling random cards and there's nothing that like comes from it per se. And then I also, you know, don't want to have to do an hour of journaling. So I absolutely love my longer practices, like when I have some time to really kind of get into it. But for like just a daily kind of fun little tarot pull, I definitely did not want something that was going to take a really long time. And I absolutely, you know, don't want anything that gives the cards more power than it gives to me, right? I don't want to pretend like the cards know more about my life than I do. I want them to kind of stay in their lane and serve the purpose that for me personally, and probably for other people, works best. And so after a lot of experimenting, this is my practice. And I wrote it down in this journal. All right, so this is the practice. So I first off start by arriving to my space or to the cards or whatever. And I don't really force myself to necessarily come up with a deep question or an intention. You know, sometimes I might have one, sometimes I might not. The point is just to kind of take a moment, a very brief moment, to like check in with myself and simply notice how I'm arriving. And so I might write down, and I wrote this as like a little bit of a instruction set for myself for this practice. But, you know, today I'm arriving with, maybe I'm gonna have a feeling or a question, a situation, or an intention. Okay, so if I do, I might just, you know, okay, I have a feeling, and I might note that in my journal. Or maybe this question feels more useful to me that day. What feels most present, if anything? So maybe if I have something on my mind, I might just write that down. Or, you know, I might just write nothing in particular. This is just a daily practice, a daily ritual, and I don't have to have anything like super big on my mind that I'm going to figure out. So then I pull my 4 cards or my symbolic objects. And usually that is from, or my intention is to have that be from 4 different decks. So the first card that I'm going to pull, I'm going to pull a tarot card for this one. And you can really pull whatever makes sense for you. But the first one, it has a function of it's the mirror. And so the question for this card is, what in this image reflects something already present in my inner or outer world? So I'm not looking up any meanings for anything that I'm pulling, right? I'm just noticing. And this is a card, a 7 of Tides. So what in this image reflects something already present in my inner or outer world? So this looks kind of stormy, right? So if it was rainy that day, I might just put, you know, rainy weather or something, right? I'm not looking at meanings at all for this. I'm really just kind of noticing, right? So if it's a person, it might be the expression on their face, the colors, the feeling that this image evokes, or maybe there's like nothing that particularly stands out for this image in the context of the prompt being the mirror. What in this image reflects something already present in my inner or outer world? So then the next card is the Disruptor. And so for this card, answers the question, what in this image catches me off guard, challenges me, surprises me, or expands my perspective? So again, I'm not trying to decode this card at all. I'm just kind of noticing what about it might interrupt my usual way of seeing. Sometimes it's a really small, tiny detail. Sometimes it's a feeling that I notice that I wasn't expecting. Sometimes it's simply that I don't like the image, or that the image doesn't really resonate with me in that moment or carry any meaning. And that's absolutely interesting as well. So in that case, I might write something like, nothing. There's nothing that, catches me off guard or challenges me or whatever. Or I might write like, I notice I'm looking for meaning, right? I'm really like putting effort into trying to find some meaning when maybe there is none. Or maybe I'm just really impatient and I'm like kind of frustrated and I want to finish this and get on with my day. Or maybe, it's just genuine and I just notice that this image like doesn't meet me today, and that's totally fine. And then I would move on. So the third pull, whether it's a card, I'm going to use my contemplation cards for this one, is the guide. And I phrase all my questions in terms of an image, but if I'm just using a word like this, so the question that I have written down for the guide card is, what in this image might be useful to remember today? So if I pull strength here, right, this is obviously not an image, but for me, I would maybe adapt this, like what about strength might be useful to remember today, right? So inner strength, outer strength, strength of mind, strength of heart, empowerment. So it's a little bit of a free association on like the meaning of strength to me. And then the fourth card, I call it the Wonder. So these are my Imagine dice, and like I said, these are like similar to Rory Story cubes. You could, if you're working with dice. So these dice are cool because they have little images, very brief, small images on them. And to me, these function very much like symbolically, right? So this is just like a clock time, but time is actually a pretty powerful concept if we kind of think about it's very archetypal. So in any case, I'm going to use dice, and the way that I would do this is, you know, maybe mix them up, not really looking. You could put these in a bag, and then I'm just going to choose one. You could roll it, and I got like this little pirate guy. Oh, where is it? Yeah, this little pirate guy. So the question that I ask for this last space, this last item or object or whatever it is, I call this one the Wonder. And so the question is, what does this lead me to wonder about as I move through today? And I don't need to answer that question. It's just something that I carry with me. So I could write it in the form of a question. I could just write it as something that I'm wondering about. Sometimes I might notice the answer later. Sometimes I won't. That's not really the point, right? The point is just to like, what am I wondering about? You know, what is something to carry with me through the day? And so once I'm done with that, depending on like how much time I have, I just have a really brief moment of integration where it's a sentence completion. So it's always the same sentence. I just change the answer. And the sentence stem is, the thing I want to remember today is blop. And then I just answer it. So what am I like kind of like carrying through? You know, what am I bringing from this? You know, is there some cohesion around these 4 different things? Maybe there isn't. And so what I really love about this type of practice is that I'm not trying to squeeze like super profound meaning out of every single card or everything that I'm pulling. I'm just kind of spending like a few intentional moments paying attention, right? Paying attention to myself, to my imagination, to the way that I am relating and responding to symbolic images or archetypal words or ideas or concepts. And some mornings this feels very meaningful, and sometimes it feels very quiet. It's just a very brief and subtle reflection. But both are worthwhile. Both are kind of worth taking that time, at least in my opinion, to do. Because over time, I think it's like these really small moments of attention that begin to change kind of how we move through our lives, right? We're also practicing on a larger meta level interoception, intuition, kind of noticing how we react to things. And that can be a really powerful practice that can extend to other areas of our lives. So in any case, as I'm wrapping up this video, if you have a daily tarot or journaling practice that is relatively brief, you know, like I said, 10 to 15 minutes, I would love to hear about it. And if you do decide to try a practice like the one that I'm sharing, you know, let me know how it evolves. I absolutely have a feeling that my practice is definitely going to continue to evolve and change too. So if you like this video, please, you know, like it, and then be sure to subscribe to my channel for more super creative ways to use tarot, oracle, journaling, dice, game aspects, particularly RPGs, for self-exploration and personal growth.